Now, gaps in supply chain have been emphasized over the past year and a half, and product demand has been full of surprises. Well, without further ado, I welcome Jesse and Debbie today. Jesse is the Digital Strategy Director in Manufacturing from Microsoft. Thanks for being here, Jesse. And Debbie Altham is Senior Director within the Sikkich Manufacturing and Distribution vertical. Welcome and thanks for being here. I'm going to throw it over to the both of you. You're going to all see me later.
Hey, Michael, thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Really great to have Jesse here to chat today. So one of the things we started talking about when we said we were going to do uh, an event on supply chain is, oh my goodness, not another supply chain event, not another one. And we're going to start talking about, labor shortages. We're going to talk about, boats and containers. We're going to start talking about trucking issues. And what we felt is that we needed to talk about something that organizations could actually get a handle on, areas of technology where we felt that they could make a difference today, and particularly how organizations can use technology to get an upper edge against their competitors when everybody is suffering from these same these same issues with regard to being able to get the supply of their goods and services. So when we started talking, I shared a story, and I'm going to share it now, that I think is a really good example of how supply chain issues can exist in a particular marketplace, but organizations who have visibility actually are able to differentiate themselves. And this is my coffee maker story. And everyone that I work with has heard about my issues with my coffee maker. So I have a built-in coffee maker. It's a hole in the kitchen. It's about this big, and it's a coffee maker that just slips into that hole, right? So 13, 14 years old, and it breaks down. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I am never going to get, with all of these difficulties with shipping and so forth, I'm going to have a hole in my kitchen that I can't fill. And of course, the first thing I did was I started ringing around. And this is a business to consumer example, but I think it exemplifies what can happen in a business to business scenario, which is often the case for many of our manufacturing clients. But I got on the phone, I traced down all the stockists of this particular coffee machine, and I got on the phone and I started ringing around. And what was really obvious is that a lot of the organizations I rang had no visibility into where those coffee machines were. They're made in Italy. So were they in stock? Were they not in stock? And if they weren't in stock, when were they coming in? And I think I probably, in the end, probably rang 15 different organizations, and one or two stuck out a mile from everyone else. So one particular organization locally here in Portland said, sure, we have none of those in stock. We have 35 on order. There are currently 21 of those have been accounted for by other people. There is a balance there. We can put your name down. They were ordered on this date. They were due to be shipped on this date. They have not yet left Italy yet. However, we have got an estimated time of arrival of the 17th of January. And I'm like, a hole in the kitchen for that long, no coffee for that long. How am I going to deal with that? But the point is they gave me a lot of confidence, right? And right, we can't, certainly I can't live my life without coffee. But the idea that they gave me confidence of knowing where that coffee machine was, as opposed to everybody else who said, well, we don't know. We'll just have to ring around. We're going to have to get it on order. We'll see what happens. I don't know whether they've got any in Italy anyway. I don't know if they're manufacturing them at the moment. Whole lot of uncertainty. So me as a customer, me as a potential buyer, and this is like these built-in coffee machines, man, they are a king's ransom. So at $3,800 for a coffee machine, I absolutely decided to use the guy who said he knew exactly where those coffee machines were. Now, he was managing my expectations as he was talking me through. I was really impressed. This was a warehouse guy who was looking up and driving his ERP, telling me, giving me that visibility, giving me that confidence that I should spend that money with him. So, and in the end, I did. The wonderful end of the story, just in case anyone's interested, was that I rang back after ringing around all of these other people. I rang back and I said, look, I have to buy my coffee machine from you. You're the one person who gave me the visibility into your supply chain, that gave me the confidence to book an order with you, because even if it was late, I would still know that I could trust you to tell me because you knew where everything was. He said, well, guess what? It looks like a couple of clients have cancelled their order. We have got 2 in stock right now. Would you like to put me to put one aside for you? And of course, I'm like, right, we're on our way. So happy end to the coffee maker story. But I hope that gives everybody an example, a really practical example of how important that supply chain visibility is. Now, all my talking, we've got Jessie here. Jessie, this is a really important thing for organizations, right? To be able to know where stuff is.
Yeah. So Debbie, I really love that example. It's something that we can all identify with, especially in the pandemic. I'm surprised there isn't a coffee shortage, not only a coffee maker shortage. I did want to also kind of share an example of how that visibility is being used as a differentiator in the B2B space as well. I work with a company, they actually engineer cooling solutions for businesses, be that hospitals, industrial applications, et cetera. And it's a very, very cost sensitive and timeline sensitive business where the contractors are actually their customers, but the contractors contract with the buildings, so the hospitals, et cetera. And what they've told us is that there's a long lead time for these build outs as far as quoting and running through the sales cycle. And one of the biggest challenges that they have is managing that lead time and their inventory. So these customers have built their own systems to collaborate. Instead of triggering an order and then that order triggering uh, supply chain activities, they actually informally tell each other, "Hey, I think we're at the 90% level of the sales stage. Can you guys order this? Do you have the confidence, or can you order this and take the risk that we might not win? But if you do place that order when we're at 90% instead of 100%, that actually saves us 2 months. And that 2 month savings translates to the hospital of 2 months shorter build time to get this system in place. So they've seen their win rate actually drastically increase because of that relationship that they have with their suppliers and being able to convey that visibility to their end customers. So it's a phenomenon that we're not only experiencing personally with kind of this supply chain visibility expectation, but also on the business side, it's becoming a strategic differentiator for them as well.
You know what? I would say the interesting thing is it, for a business, it's difficult to influence the speed at which a container will arrive to be packed. It's difficult to influence the ability for truck drivers to be available to get products off the dock and out there into the system. But what you can influence is that competitive advantage, right? You can influence that and stand out amongst your competition. And I think that makes a huge difference. If the problems are all the same, if everyone's experiencing the same problem, how do you stand out? And this visibility thing is massive.
Absolutely. And I think the visibility provides customers with the data that they need to take responsible risks
Mm.
and identify what those rewards to those risks might be. So, for example, instead of doing things in series where you wait for the last step to be completed before you start the next step, you can run a what if analysis to say, let's do these things in parallel. And what's that gain for me from an advantage perspective and a lead time perspective if we order both of these things at the same time instead of wait for the first to come and then order the second one, etc. So this visibility and getting the data to the decision makers is really a game changer. COVID kind of accelerated it, but I think it's going to be strategic going forward.
So the example that I used was an organization who was making really good use of their ERP system. So this is the difficulty. There are a lot of organizations out there. Changing your ERP is a massive endeavor. This is something that takes a lot of effort from an organization. It causes disruption in the organization. These are carefully planned out, executed projects that can take 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, or longer to happen. And what I think organizations are doing is, if they do not have an ERP system that is able to be moved quickly enough, that advantage has gone. Potentially they've got 12 months of disappointed customers because they haven't been able to report back that inventory visibility. So I know, Jesse, that Microsoft's been working really, really hard on finding ways in which technology can help an organization that doesn't require them initially, at least, because ERP is still the underpinning. This does not discount the need potentially for having that really good foundation in your ERP. But I know Microsoft has said, we need to be able to help organizations move faster, to be able to give them that visibility into their supply chain in a way that compensates, I think, for maybe an ERP that is not yet up to date. It may be old technology or too hard to change in a sort of rapid way. So I know there are 2 products that Microsoft have recently launched into the market. We have Intelligent Order Management, and we also have a product called Supply Chain Insights. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what those 2 products are and maybe give us a differentiate. How are they different?
Yeah, absolutely, Debbie. So it's a great point. So I'm gonna take a step back and set some context as to how things were done before and the problems that these solutions are trying to solve. You outlined it perfectly. ERP is the underpinning of the business, and that's where kind of the source of truth is going to reside and is going to continue to reside. But because of the lack of agility of an ERP system, typically you would have a lot of informal ways to communicate. Email and Excel, we're all familiar with kind of doing business in those areas. But as you can imagine, that creates a lot of silos and creates a lot of ambiguity across the corporation. So what Microsoft did and what we learned from our own supply chain, we actually have an $8 billion supply chain and manufacturing organization within Microsoft. But what we learned was that there was a lot of uh, uh, opportunity and a lot of value that could be created by um, making these systems more robust outside of an ERP. So when we talk about supply chain insights, it's a system that's been built on using our Power Platform tools, and it's specifically to help you get visibility into the different layers of your supply chain and to help you collaborate with the members of that supply chain. So we typically talk about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, et cetera. But what Supply Chain Insights does is it gives you a visual representation of those tiers and an ability to collaborate. So to the example that I gave initially, you might not have the luxury of waiting until an order is placed before telling your supplier that you want them to trigger an order themselves because of the lead time that requires. So you want to tell them and collaborate to say, I think this order is coming. There's a very high likelihood that we are going to get this order in 2 months. So if they have a 6-month lead time that they need to account for, they can take that opportunity to balance their business, et cetera. The other really interesting thing that Supply Chain Insights does is it incorporates external data. So we think about the other really critical part of supply chain is logistics. Supply chains are now much more global. So the ability to overlay, weather data on a global perspective, political unrest, any border complications, traffic data on a local perspective gives you the opportunity to also manage your supply chain accordingly. How we started out this conversation, right, is that this isn't a conversation to tell you that there is a shortage of truck drivers. It's a conversation to tell you what to do because there is a shortage of truck drivers, et cetera. So Supply Chain Insights gives you all of the data and gives you all of the context that you need to collaborate with your suppliers in order to maximize your profitability and your ability to deliver at the end of the day. Now, when we look at intelligent order management, we have a similar parallel phenomenon going on the front side or the front end of your customer relationship. And this has also been accelerated by COVID. We all have felt the shift in the B2C market, right? Most of us are not going to the store in the same way that we used to. And many companies have set up different ways to interface with them. So you can buy through the app, buy through the website, buy through the store, buy through their third-party vendors. And so intelligent order management helps you to figure out where you should have your inventory, how to manage the orders that you're receiving through all of these different channels in order to, again, maximize your ability to deliver to those customers and also provide them with visibility into where their order sits. And this started off as a B2C focused capability, but we're also seeing B2B companies try to establish more direct relationships with their customers. So we see a lot of relevance and a lot of applicability of intelligent order management in that space as well.
So Jesse, tell me a little bit about what sort of organizations, how would you identify an organization that was maybe really in desperate need of some of these sorts of technologies? How would they recognize it in themselves? What are the attributes, I think, of the organizations that are looking for these sorts of solutions?
Sure. So a few really high level aspects of these organizations are, do they have a global and complex supply chain? Are there items that have long lead times within their supply chain? And that could be their direct vendors or their vendors' vendors or their vendors', right? The other piece is there a logistical component that they have to manage as well? And what is the cost of carrying inventory? So these tools help you to optimize across all of these different dimensions. So you can balance your inventory considerations with your lead time considerations, et cetera, and then minimize your cost while simultaneously maximizing your ability to deliver orders in full. So those are a few aspects that are important.
So from an architectural perspective, if you like, from what I'm hearing you say, organizations got an ERP system that is maybe needs to be modernized. They don't have the ability right now to start a modernization or at least get that delivered, the value of a new ERP. So what we're doing is on top of that ERP, we are adding applications that add value, use that data, and then integrate with other third parties to really enrich that data for that supply chain visibility, supply chain management perspective, allowing the organization to go very fast into some of these more valuable activities without having to immediately make that change, or at least they can concurrently be changing out an ERP, but still realizing value and competitive edge in the supply chain field with these additional applications.
Absolutely, Debbie. That's a perfect way to summarize the pivot that Microsoft is making. I think one point that I want to emphasize in what you just said is any ERP solution can take advantage of these new solutions. So you don't have to be a Dynamics customer today for your ERP to use Supply Chain Insights or Intelligent Order Management. These tools enable supply chain leaders to get better visibility and make better decisions and push that back into their ERP, even though their long-term plan might be to modernize that platform.
So for the techos on the call, the people who've got a bit of an eye to the technology, you mentioned the Power Platform. And I know there's also part of the structure of this is something called a Dataverse. Can you just give us a little picture of these technologies? What's the Power Platform? What's the Dataverse?
Absolutely, Debbie. So it's a catchy term, the Dataverse, et cetera, and as is the Power Platform. But essentially, all of Microsoft's business applications leverage these tools. And what the Power Platform represents is an ability to visualize data, create applications, and create workflows. And how Microsoft uses the Power Platform is we figure out the scenarios that are valuable to our customers and build those solutions using those tools. And it creates a great opportunity for companies like Sikkich to use those same tools to extend those capabilities based on the specific needs of companies and specific subverticals within an industry. And the Dataverse is the underpinning for all of those tools, right? So it provides a common data model, a common data source where you can use our tools to visualize that data, to create workflows that are triggered from that data, and to create applications based on that data in a way that's sustainable and upgradable. And you can continue to take advantage of new investments that Microsoft and Sikkich are making over time. One question, actually, Debbie.
Yeah.
Can you talk to how Sikkich is using your deployment model and how that differentiates you as a partner when it comes to deploying these solutions and deploying ERP for companies that are trying to transform?
Right. Well, I've got two ways to answer that. And the first way is to answer the first way I look at it is how do organizations know what technologies need to be brought to bear to be able to solve some of these problems? How does an organization know whether supply chain insights or intelligent order management or a customer engagement application or an ERP? How do they know what are the building blocks to create that differentiator and competitive advantage for them? So Sikkich has been a really big proponent of a framework that Microsoft launched called Catalyst. And what it does is it gives us a way of taking an organization's really important business goals and mapping them backwards into what sort of applications will serve those goals the best. So we do a lot of work with organizations going, right, you don't need to know what the technology is that's going to solve the problem, but let's walk you from your business objectives and walk that back into the right solutions to solve the problems that you're wanting to solve. So I think that's the first thing, is that we generally want to stand back and say, right, you think you need this, you may think you need that, you may think you need a new ERP, but if urgency and visibility and all of that is more important to you right now, we can move these blocks around and organize and prioritize so we're serving your hottest needs first. So that's the first thing. And the other thing, I think we've got some time a little later in this. I think the next session is going to be on Sikkich's Head Start approach. So what we've done is we've recognized that it's all about the speed to value. Organizations want to spend the money. They want to get the value sooner rather than later. And typically with technology, as we're talking about ERP projects where, if you're taking 3 years to deliver the value that you're investing over those 3 years, and organizations can only get the real value at the end of those 3 years, we need to do something around how we deploy these systems to pull that back in and get it up and running a lot faster. So Sikkich have developed a way of approaching the deployment of technology so that organizations can get very much quicker results from their efforts when they're doing these big sort of IT projects. And I believe that's what Jeremy's going to cover next. So if that's like the two, you have a look at the strategy, understand the strategic intent of the investment that organizations are making and the business problems they're trying to solve as the first step. And then as the second step, in solving those decisions, do it in a way that delivers faster and more quickly the results that they're looking for.